r/AskReddit. Serious. People who recovered from COVID-19. What was it like? Got tested only because in March upon arriving home from school 10 of my 12 roommates tested positive. I was positive, but didn't even know I had it. I had some weird red bumps/dots on my toes that later became a known symptom, but at the time I had no idea it was a result of COVID. Also lost my sense of taste, but again did not know that was a symptom until after I had already recovered. I'm 22 and know a lot of people my age who have tested positive or after the fact positive on the antibody test, and my experience is pretty similar with all of this as well. It was the worst sickness I've ever had. It was scary how fast it happened too. Started having a bit of chest heaviness and harder to breathe on a Monday. By Wednesday night I fully realized the situation, that I could possibly die from this. That thought went on for 3 days straight until I started laying down on my stomach to put pressure off my lungs, and I would do breathing exercises despite how difficult it was. I still had fever, but that went away on its own, and some Tylenol that may or may not have worked. I think if more people knew how bad it gets and how fast it progresses, then maybe they would wear a damn mask. Who am I kidding? They won't, because some people are selfish. 35 male. Woke up one morning in mid-March with chills and sweating. Assumed it was a fever, but didn't have a thermometer, so I ordered one online. Over the course of that first day started to develop a bit of a cough. During the week I was waiting for the thermometer to arrive. I had a persistent cough and assumed fever, which I attempted to control with ibuprofen and acetaminophen. Little to no appetite and no energy. Thermometer arrived. Took temp 100.4 F. That same day I noticed I had lost my sense of smell and taste. My fever never went under 100 degrees for the next week, even with medicine, and the cough went from a light clearing your throat kind of thing to a trying to exorcise a demon from the pit of your stomach kind of thing. Never had trouble breathing though, thank God. In all, it was 14 days from first waking up with a fever to when I finally woke up with a normal temperature. The cough subsided around the same time, and I got my sense of smell back pretty rapidly thereafter. Never got tested, because at the time the CDC recommendation was to deal with symptoms at home if you could, rather than exposing medical professionals to the virus, and back then there weren't really testing sites. I'd have had to go into a hospital. In all, it was the sickest I've ever been in my life, but I know how fortunate I am that it wasn't any worse. So glad you're okay, and thanks for sharing. I keep wondering if I had it too in early March after traveling internationally. It sounds like your experience. I've had loss of smell and taste from other respiratory infections, most strongly when I had mono in college, so thankfully it wasn't completely novel. Added note, ibuprofen doesn't really do anything for fevers, but acetaminophen is a fever suppressant. The latter is also hard on your liver. Former isn't, but can be hard on stomach and kidneys, so shouldn't be used for hangovers. For any random person reading through this, ibuprofen or another NSAID like Aleve taken in excess will fuck with your digestive tract, but excess Tylenol will literally kill you. Be safe y'all. It'll be 6 months next week since I got it. I still have trouble breathing, am exhausted constantly, and have bad sleep hallucinations. I have a follow-up next month, and I'm hoping they can tell me if I have permanent lung/brain damage, so I know if this will never go away. Wish people realized how much damage it does, and stop focusing just on the percent of people who die. I was only 38, thin and fit, plant-based no sugar diet, with no underlying issues, and it's completely changed my life. Instead of getting up to work out, I'm sleeping 10 to 12 hours a night, no more than 2 to 3 hours at a time due to the hallucinations, and napping during the day, and now addicted to coffee, just to get through the day, and frankly, it barely helps. Too afraid to try to work out due to the breathing issues. Young, had pretty bad asthma. COVID was a breeze for me. Started with some difficulty breathing, nothing to be alarmed about but more than normal and noticeable. Was still doing home workouts when it started. Then developed a dry cough, annoying but not awful, and then a slight fever and body aches. Fever went away quickly. Cough stuck around a few days. Breathing issues stuck around longer, but never go to the point they were scary. I just had to use more effort to breathe deep. Took a couple days off my workouts when I had the fever, then went right back into it. A few weeks later it was totally gone. Breathing pretty much normal again. Had a lung scan for something unrelated, no damage whatsoever, and damage from a past virus 3 years ago they said would be permanent is now gone as well. Personally I've had colds that were far worse, and for me the flu is always way worse than this was. Hi, I, and my family of 6, had it at the beginning of July. For reference, I'm mid-20s, female, overweight with asthma/IBS issues. Day 1, 2, fatigued as all hell, all I wanted to do was sleep. Headache, stomach cramps plus diarrhea, gassy, super nauseous scratchy throat with dry cough, low fever of 100 at night. Got tested on day 2. Day 3, 4, dry cough turns into phlegmy cough, worse in the mornings. Fatigued to all hell, heartburn plus bloating/gas plus nausea. Temps AVG of 98 test came back positive on day 3. Day 5, when things get gnarly, wake up with severely congested sinuses that gave me a terrible headache, short of breath during activity, little to no cough, fatigued to all hell, terrible body aches. Day 6, fatigued, severely congested with sinus headache, short of breath after activity, little to no cough, terrible body aches, bloating/gas plus stomach cramps plus nausea, fever of 100. Days 7 to 8. Fevers of 100 to 101 all day, extremely fatigued, I could barely keep my head up, or sitting up in bed. Pretty much slept the whole day away, to avoid the body aches, stomach pain, headaches. I also began to lose my balance when getting up, and was unable to focus or concentrate on anything. Day 9, fever's gone, barely had a cough, deep chest pain that hurt more when breathing deeply, it felt like my whole chest/abdomen area was bruised. Oximeter read me at 97 to 99, so I never worried about oxygen deprivation. Still super fatigued, was unable to really do much besides sleep and drink liquids. Kept the TV on for noise, but couldn't tell you what I watched. Day 10, no fever, pain in chest has lessened, coughing once or twice a day with phlegm. Day 11 plus was all recovery mode. I took a lot of naps when I felt like my body needed them. Kept drinking liquids, ate a lot of soups. The chest pain/bruising went away after another 2 days. Taste and smell came back 2 weeks after symptoms. Some things to notice, as someone with asthma, my cough was never horrible or painful. I had a dry raspy cough for a day or 2, that turned phlegmy, and then improved quickly. Day 11 and on I would maybe cough up some phlegm in the mornings but it never was constant. It's completely gone now 20 plus days out. No shortness of breath as others have had. I was still able to walk around/talk freely. The 2 days I had some shortness of breath was mostly due to my nose congestion. I did use my inhaler a lot. The symptoms I'm still experiencing are stomach issues that I'm trying to figure out. My IBS was under control beforehand, and now is completely fucked again. I'm also still battling bad fatigue plus headaches, brain fog and body aches. They come and go, but are almost exactly the same as the ones I had during COVID-19. I first tested positive July 2nd, then again July 14th after most of my symptoms had ended. I got a negative on July 22nd, and was able to return to work this Monday. Everyone in my family got sick. 3/6 of us had worse symptoms than I did, 2/6 had my symptoms, and only 1/6 of us spiked to 99 fever one night, and showed no other symptoms the whole time. We contracted it from a coworker who kept going to work while showing symptoms. Thankfully, we have all recovered with no hospitalizations. Suffice to say, it knocked us out on our asses, drained my savings, and has left most of us with lingering issues. Wear a mask. Don't be stupid. Just because you are fortunate enough to get a slight fever doesn't mean someone you love won't be as lucky. So, I'm posting what I went through, but I don't know if it was covered. During the time it happened, we couldn't get tested unless there was a fever over 101. I have since had an antibody test, and I had it at some point. I'm in my low 40s. Day 1 2 3, ramp up of nasal drainage and what I can best describe as a stinging when I breathed. Like chlorine. Used saline but that was short term. Day 4 the coughing started. It didn't affect my sleep, but it was almost constant. Hot tea soothed it, as did some honey. Stinging still there in the nose. Day 5, coughing worsened. No longer just light dry coughs. Deep coughs. Coughs that would make my stomach queasy. Sense of smell became altered. Mucus drainage increased to the point I had to keep a spit cup. This is also when I started feeling fatigued. Day 6 to 8, it got bad, but no fever. Doctor suggested to just quarantine, but call if it became hard to breathe. The coughing was so hard it was causing spasms in my back and diaphragm. Imagine coughing so many times your diaphragm just goes nope, no more air for you for about 5 seconds. I got really close to calling an ambulance. I could barely bend over or lean because my back hurt so much. Day 9, woke up to realize my pillow smelled really bad. My sheets were also soaked and smelled, but I felt amazing. Still a bit of coughing, but not as much. I was sore all over though. Slowly started stretching and was able to actually do some chores around the house, which my son was grateful for. Day 10 on, back slowly became better. Coughing subsided, but I still have a dry cough. More than before, not nearly as much as during. Sense of smell fully returned. I think it's improved actually. It was much easier on my son, 12, who suffered similar symptoms as me starting about my day 4. His lasted only 5 days. He also never had a fever, but he had the same stinging nose and loss of smell for a few days. Very little cough. I was one of the super mild cases, and in a very isolated area with few tests. Rumor around town was that we had perhaps 50 tests available for the entire town, and they were prioritizing known exposures and healthcare workers for them. I wasn't tested, but listed for my state as a probable positive. It started in early March. I felt a little bit weird, but not sick. I had a strange tickling itch in my throat, at the base of my throat, that I couldn't cough to resolve. I decided it was probably early spring allergies to the trees starting to bloom, and that was it. But the tickle persisted, and it was almost impulsive to cough to try to dislodge it, so I was coughing more and more every day, which ended up leaving me with a raw, irritated throat. A few days later, the migraine set in. I have chronic migraines, though, so I didn't pay this too much attention, just noting that it was far worse than others I've experienced, and lasted for much longer. Shortly after the migraine started, my sinuses started backing up, and the post-nasal drip didn't help my irritated throat. I did decide to see a doctor at this point, and he put me on an antibiotic course for 5 days. On the Friday of that week, I remember having issues with dizziness, fatigue, and shortness of breath. It hit me like a sledgehammer. I didn't feel like my lungs were full of anything, but rather it just felt like they just refused to inflate fully. When I tried to take a deep breath, my chest would burn and ache. I couldn't get enough air in, and even a 6-foot walk from my desk to the front of the office was too much. I had to stop at the front desk and catch my breath before picking up the mail and making my way back to my desk at the back of the room. At this point, I knew something was really wrong. I called my doctor again, since I'd finished my 5-day antibiotic course and was still feeling terrible, if not worse. My doctor wasn't concerned, because he said my lungs sounded clear. Even when I told him how hard it was to get air, he told me I was fine, to continue working, and take another antibiotic course. On top of that he added taking Robitussin 3x per day, and 3 Tylenol 3x a day. I went back to work on Monday, but my boss sent me home early when she saw how I was doing. I had a low-grade fever, she told me later once I'd recovered, and we were back in the office. Now about 2.5 weeks into it, and I was staying home from work when closures started happening. Myself and my boss were working from home full-time. I finished up the second antibiotic course, but I felt worse. On top of all the previous symptoms, I had gastric issues and abdominal pains. If you draw a line 2 inches directly down from the center of your sternum, that's exactly where they were. They were sharp, frequent, and excruciatingly painful. It felt like I was being stabbed in the gut. My fever also spiked at this point, and I was consistently reading at around 101.3, not super high by any means, but my personal normal baseline is 97.3, so it was high for my own body's norm. I called the doctor again, insistent that I needed to be tried on something that wasn't just antibiotics, and brought up my concerns about COVID-19. He insisted that, because he didn't hear fluid in my lungs, and my fever hadn't spiked above 104, that I didn't need to be tested. He put me on antibiotics for a third time, upped the Robitussin to 4x a day, and told me to swap out the 3 Tylenol 3x/day for Aleve at the same dose. At this point, working on my third week and about to start another round of antibiotics, I was ridiculously concerned. After getting off the phone with the doctor, I called my county's public health office. I explained my symptoms. I explained what my doctor was doing about it, and she was immediately concerned. She advised that I had to be monitored by someone, and immediately in full quarantine mode, and if my gums were white, to go to the ER to be hospitalized for low oxygen. She said they didn't have any tests available to test me with, but that I was likely positive, and to absolutely not take another round of antibiotics or Aleve. The Robitussin was the only thing she asked me to keep, because it did help relieve my chest pain, throat, and head symptoms. She ended up calling me once a day for the next week to monitor my symptoms and make sure I didn't need emergency assistance, and then every other day for the next week, until I'd gone 3 full days with no recurrence of symptoms. To this day, my breathing still hasn't fully recovered. I'm a tiny bit on the chunky side, and I'd had a slight wheeze when exercising since childhood, but after getting sick, I still struggle to be physically active at more than a jog. I have to be very careful about what types of exercising I do, but all the other symptoms have gone away, and I'm very grateful that I was one of those cases that was very mild and didn't need to be hospitalized. I'll never know for sure if I had it, since I wasn't tested, but our public health official was very sure that I did.